Indiana Fever season ticket holders and Caitlin Clark fans are literally tagging Fever GM Amber Cox in posts while selling back-to-back game tickets for pennies. Yes, that's happening right now. Fans who plan to drive hours to watch Caitlin Clark are canceling trips, dumping seats, and calling for Stephanie White's job after another blown lead against Atlanta. So, if you've been watching this team fall apart in real time and wondering when enough becomes enough, you're in the right place, because the economic revolt against this front office just went public in a way the Indiana Fever cannot ignore. They planned trips, they canceled trips, they bought tickets, they sold their tickets, they rebought tickets, they sold their tickets again, they finally gave up. People have told me we decided to not try it again this year. All right. Then there was the "is there a back injury, not a back injury" situation.
They planned trips, they canceled trips, they bought tickets, they sold their tickets, they rebought tickets, they sold their tickets again, they finally gave up. People have told me, we decided to not try it again this year. All right, then there was the "is there a back injury, not a back injury" situation. People have had enough, folks.
People have had enough, folks. Someone who drove 4 hours to watch Caitlin Clark last season is now sitting there refreshing StubHub trying to offload 2 seats for less than what they paid to park. And that's the story right now. Not the loss to Atlanta itself, but what happened the morning after it. When Clark arrived in Indiana, Fever games didn't just sell out. They sold out fast, with fans building road trip groups around away games, flying in from other states just to say they were in the building, and refreshing waitlist pages hoping someone dropped a seat. This wasn't casual interest. This was the kind of crowd energy that franchises spend decades trying to manufacture. And Indiana got it almost overnight because of one player. So, what does it mean when that same fan base starts flooding resale markets within 48 hours of a loss?
Stephanie White needs to go. Watching Caitlin Clark go crazy yesterday in the first quarter, oh folks, it brought us back to 24. Oh, it brought us back to the good old days. Cook, CC, cook. Cook, CC, cook. And then Stephanie White, she started tweaking. Doing that tweaking thing on the sideline. She started sniffing. She had that tinkle, that twinkle in her eye that said, oh, this will be a great time to give Kelsey Mitchell the ball.
Seats that sold for multiples of face value 6 months ago are now listed below face. And some are going for as low as less than $10 on resale platforms right now. Not discounted, not marked down a little. Literal pennies on the dollar for tickets to watch the most talked about player in women's basketball. The post that spread fastest came from a season ticket holder named John Michael, who travels to games with his daughter and publicly announced he was selling his tickets for the July 17th and 18th home games against the New York Liberty and Seattle Storm. He tagged Amber Cox directly in the caption, not just venting to his followers, but putting the Fever's own GM on notice in front of thousands of people. And the caption spread because it wasn't just frustration.
The Pacers ownership better be paying attention. Just sold tickets and canceled our hotel/flight reservations for the back-to-back home games on July 17th and 18th. They had tickets to 2 games. My daughter and I have flown in 2 years in a row. We're both so tired of watching terrible basketball.
Fan groups that spent last season organizing watch parties and coordinating road trips have gone quiet or shifted into frustration threads. And the grassroots enthusiasm that made Fever games must-see TV is turning into something the organization can't just ride out. What makes all of this genuinely alarming for Indiana is that the Fever themselves started discounting tickets. So, a franchise that ran legitimate waitlists is now running a clearance sale on seats to watch the best women's basketball player on the planet get sabotaged by her own coach and the refs.
Oh, this will be a great time to give Kelsey Mitchell the ball and just ruin everybody's good time. Kelsey Mitchell, it's all about Kelsey Mitchell. It's not about Caitlin Clark. It's not about the fans. It's not even about winning games. It's about Kelsey Mitchell and letting Kelsey Mitchell do what Kelsey Mitchell wants to do. And that's dribble, 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 dribble. Stephanie White would rather lose with Kelsey Mitchell than win with Caitlin Clark.
That's not a Clark problem. Fans aren't done with her. They're done with the people making decisions around her. And the people doing this, the ones tagging the GM and eating financial losses to sell their seats, aren't casual fans who drifted away after one bad game. They're the ones who renewed early, bought the gear, and built the communities this team's entire revenue model depended on. You don't plan entire family vacations around games if you're quote-unquote a fair weather fan. You don't do that. You don't do it. You're not gonna do it. Real Caitlin Clark fans, and they are fed up with how she's being handled and the way this team has been built, the way it's coached. You name. Don't plan entire family vacations around games if you're a fair weather fan. You don't do that. You're not going to do it. Caitlin Clark dropped 26 points and 7 assists against Atlanta the other night, and Indiana still lost by 17. So, the question isn't whether Clark showed up. She absolutely showed up. The question is why Stephanie White kept making decisions that took the ball out of her hands at the exact moments it hurt most. Clark went off in the first quarter, 13 points on 3 of 4 shooting from 3. And the Fever put up a season-high 39 points in that opening period alone, going into halftime with a 59-56 lead. That's Clark doing what Clark does, manufacturing offense and dragging this team into a position to win.
The Indiana Fever were just decimated by the Atlanta Dream. Absolutely decimated. After Caitlin Clark with a historic first quarter. A historic first quarter. She dropped 13 points in the first quarter. I mean, just look at this. 13 points in the first quarter. 5 for 6 from the field. 3 for 4 from the three-point. And
Indiana scored 15 points in the entire third quarter while Atlanta went on a 28-5 run. 15 points in a quarter after leading at halftime. The moment fans keep rewatching is a sideline exchange in the third quarter with 8:41 left. Indiana's still up by 5. Clark sitting at 19 points with only 2 turnovers. White got animated with her on the sideline after a foul call, and Clark came back onto the floor visibly deflated.
Caitlin's arguing with the coaching staff. She's trying to talk. I see she was talking to Austin Kelly right here once again. Staff. So instead of going straight to Stephanie White, and what is Stephanie White doing looking away from Caitlin Clark? Now, habits told me one thing, is that whenever Stephanie White looks away from Caitlin Clark while Caitlin is looking at Stephanie or approaching Stephanie, that usually means that Stephanie White was.
Atlanta then went on a 13-0 run. Clark committed 5 more turnovers in that quarter alone. One source watching the exchange described it as White spitting poison on her. And honestly, the body language after that moment is hard to read any other way. Fans have been calling this the icing pattern for weeks now. White pulling Clark during runs or benching her at moments where the Fever actually have momentum, not because of foul trouble, not for rest, but rotational decisions that consistently destroy the one player on the floor who can create a shot out of nothing. And then in the fourth quarter, with Indiana trailing by 10 and 6 minutes still on the clock, White subbed Kelsey Mitchell out for Tyisha Harris, a player who hadn't seen the floor all night. That's not a rotation.
Whenever Caitlin Clark is looking at Stephanie White to say, "I told you so," Stephanie White can never make eye contact with her. Caitlin Clark is always voicing her opinions to Austin Kelly because Stephanie White won't hear a damn thing.
That's a white flag with 6 minutes left and Caitlin Clark still in uniform. White's post-game press conference leaned on her 3A's framework: awareness, anticipation, active defending, and none of that is wrong in theory, but Indiana wasn't executing any of it, and her answer was a process explanation when fans wanted an accountability moment. The defensive breakdowns against Atlanta are partly a roster problem. Indiana doesn't have the rim protection to stop a team that attacks the paint the way Atlanta does, but White's adjustments came way too late, and the deficit was already double digits before she changed anything meaningful. What's driving fans to StubHub isn't this one game. It's that this structure keeps repeating. Clark builds momentum. Coaching decisions chip away at it, and Indiana ends up on the wrong end of a run they had no answer for. The Atlanta game just happened to be the one where people finally stopped tolerating it. Coaching decisions and defensive breakdowns don't explain everything that happened in that game. Indiana got whistled for 29 fouls. Atlanta got called for 24. The Dream shot 31 free throws while the Fever shot 21.
They called foul after foul after foul after foul when nobody was getting touched. But when Caitlin Clark did that same drive to the hole and was getting hit all game, they didn't call that foul. When Kelsey Mitchell goes up for a layup and is getting pulled from behind, her hand hits Ryan Howard in the face and she gets a technical. But when Angel Reese goes up for a layup and elbows somebody for the third time in 2 games, no upgrade on Angel Reese.
And that 10 attempt gap doesn't sound massive until you watch the game and see exactly when those calls came and who they came against. Fans are pulling up side-by-side clips right now of Clark driving into contact and getting nothing, then Dream players drawing fouls on lighter contact of possession later. Stack enough of those plays together, and you can't call it random anymore. Clark herself put it plainly after the game, saying, "It's really hard to do that when all we do is foul and they score." And she specifically called out how the foul trouble spoiled Indiana's transition game in the second half entirely. That's not a player venting. That's a player describing exactly how the whistle changed the structure of the game. The ghost foul situation is what's really got fans fired up because there are clips circulating of Clark getting called for fouls on plays where her hands were completely clean. And those calls didn't come at random moments. They came.
Watch this film, and I'm going to show you how the double standard is crazy. But both players hit Caitlin Clark's arms. She comes through and still makes the bucket. And then Angel Reese has something to say. Always, like, she annoys me. Caitlin Clark hits a 3. I think that's the most open she's been the entire season. And look at, here's a moving screen. Do you see how she moves her leg out to get that screen on Caitlin Clark? That's an illegal screen.
At moments where putting Clark in foul trouble would hurt Indiana the most. And that timing is hard to dismiss. Then there's the challenge situation, which was its own disaster. Stephanie White did use a challenge successfully on a Sophie Cunningham foul call, so she wasn't completely asleep at the wheel, but she didn't challenge Aaliyah Boston's 5th foul, and that one really stung. Analysts watching the game noted the contact on Boston's 5th foul was marginal at best. The kind of call you challenge when it's a star player in a close game, because the threshold for using a challenge on a call like that should be lower, not higher. Boston sat out critical minutes because of it, and Indiana's interior presence disappeared right when Atlanta was building the run that broke the game open. WNBA officiating is already under a microscope across the whole league.
Crazy. That was the first one I was just like, how's that a foul? Because watch this, Caitlin Clark's being held. 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. Remember that, because you're about to see a whole bunch of ghost fouls. There's another one, Sophie Cunningham. Every single play, we're trying to build a lead, but we can't because the refs stop the game every single second when nobody's.
So Indiana fans making noise about this aren't operating in isolation. The credibility around referee consistency has been shaky for a while now. And when you drop a specific game with documented foul disparities into that existing conversation, it doesn't read like paranoia. It reads like one more data point in a pattern. What makes the officiating anger compound everything else is exactly that, it compounds everything else.
Like, this is her. She was smiling at the end of the first quarter. You know what I'm saying? Happy as hell, hitting threes. Look at the defenders' faces looking like they was on the verge of crying, on the verge of tears. Terrified of this girl. Terrified that she was on pace to drop 52 points tonight, chat. 52 points. 13 points a quarter. And mind you, I don't even think she was done by that point. But this is Caitlin Clark, man. This is who Stephanie White wants to continuously take.
Clark's already dealing with a coach who pulls her at the wrong moments and teammates who can't finish the look she creates. A whistle that leans against her closes off the last few escape routes she has to keep Indiana in games. The refs won't address it publicly. The league office won't reverse course. And that anger has nowhere to go except straight back toward the Fever front office and into the StubHub listings piling up by the hour. 26 points and 7 assists in a 17-point loss.
Mitchell with the beautiful shot and drain. Mitchell on the way she can dance with the basketball, that time behind her back. Pow, pow.
That's the whole story right there. Because Clark did her job and then some, and the people around her did just enough wrong to make sure it didn't matter. Clark went 8 of 16 from the field, 5 of 10 from 3, and created open looks all night for teammates who couldn't do anything with them. She was reading the defense correctly, making the right pass, hitting her spots, and putting Indiana in position to score on possession after possession. That's not a player who struggled. That's a player who got let down repeatedly by the people she was trying to set up. Relia Boston missed layups that had no business going anywhere except through the net. Not one, not two, multiple attempts in the paint where Clark had done all the work getting her open, and Boston arrived at the spot and still couldn't finish. Boston's entire value to this roster is supposed to be that she converts exactly those looks, the reliable interior presence who cleans up what Clark creates.
Billings gives it up. Hall flags it down. Clark coming back to it. Circling, dishing, Hines Allen hitting on the jumper.
She couldn't do it when Indiana needed it most. Kelsey Mitchell had stretches where she operated like she forgot anyone else was on the floor, holding the ball well past the point where the play Clark had already set up was still available, and those possessions just died. Clark would read something, create the window, and Mitchell would dribble right past it. That's not bad shooting. That's a disconnect that costs real points.
Thousands of tickets available. Let me just pull this over so you can see it real good. And $10 seats. $10.89, $11.80. There's a slew of those. Again, guys, we're talking about games that Caitlin Clark we think, is available to play in.
Lexi Hull and Monique Billings combined for a performance that would embarrass players on rookie minimum deals, let alone players who collected the offseason money they collected. Billings specifically is a problem that won't go away quietly because her contract number isn't a secret, and her production against Atlanta's paint attack was basically zero in the moments that actually mattered. Indiana needed interior toughness to counter what Atlanta does, and Billings disappeared. The bench, though, told a completely different story. Sophie Cunningham came in and immediately brought aggression and ball movement that the starting unit hadn't shown all night. Melissa Smith gave Indiana a physical presence the starters never provided. Raven Johnson ran the offense with real composure, made the right reads, and looked more connected to the game plan than some players logging 30-plus minutes.
To fly in for games this year, but after seeing the players that were brought in and then watching Stephanie White destroy our offense, I will not be making any trips this year. Wow, we have traveled multiple times from Michigan to Indy to watch the Fever the last 2 years. I'd love to go watch this year, but there's not a lot to watch, and I just can't bring myself to get excited enough to drive 4.5 hours for the displeasure of watching this Fever team. Damn.
When your bench guards are making better decisions than your starters, that's not a depth compliment. That's an indictment of the rotation. And that rotation conversation leads straight back to Stephanie White because the players getting the most minutes against Atlanta weren't the players who performed best, and the players who actually moved the ball and competed came off the bench. Clark dropped 26 in a loss because 5 other players couldn't convert what she handed them, and Indiana still lost by 17. The ticket fire sale is happening right now, but 6 months from now, if nothing changes, the Fever won't just be dealing with unhappy fans on social media. They'll be walking into sponsorship meetings without the one thing that made those conversations easy, a guaranteed sellout building with Clark's name above the door. Thousands of tickets available. Let me just pull this over so you can see it real good. And $10 seats. $10.89, $11.80. There's a slew of those. Again, guys, we're talking about games that Caitlin Clark is, we think, available to play in. The financial pressure is already visible. Discounted tickets, empty seats showing up on national broadcasts, and a front office that built its entire revenue projection around Clark's star power, now watching that projection bleed out in real time.
Everybody driving to Indiana to watch a game comes down here and says, I don't even want to give them my time and money. I mean, seriously. I canceled our trip as well, sold the tickets to Ticketmaster for a loss Absolutely, until you fire Stephanie White and the staff and yourself.
Every deal Indiana signed, assuming those crowds were locked in, every sponsorship conversation that went well because they could point to waitlists and road trip fan groups, all of it gets harder to defend when the resale market looks like it does right now. Coaching change and roster move conversations aren't fringe fan theories anymore. People who cover this league for a living are taking them seriously. And the scenarios getting the most traction involve either replacing White with a coach who actually builds sets around Clark's pick-and-roll game, or making roster moves that finally give Indiana real interior defense and shooting around her. Both conversations are happening at the same time, which tells you how much patience is left. The Clark to another team scenario, which nobody wanted to even say out loud a year ago, is now something fans bring up regularly, and they're not bringing it up because they want it. They're scared it becomes the only rational outcome if Indiana keeps burning her peak years on a structure that doesn't work. And that fear is exactly what's driving people to sell seats at a loss right now instead of waiting to see how the season plays out. What 2026 actually looks like with the right moves in place is worth thinking about clearly. Clark at full health, running pick and roll in a system built for her, with a coach who doesn't bench her during critical runs and teammates who convert the look she creates. That's an MVP caliber player on a team that belongs in a championship conversation. That version of Indiana is absolutely real. It just requires the front office to make decisions that match what the fan base is screaming at them right now. Every ticket listed at a loss is a data point Amber Cox has to account for, because the Fever's financial model for the next several years runs entirely on Clark's star power translating into attendance, sponsorship deals, and media value. Fans doing this aren't casual viewers. They're the core, and they're sending a message with their wallets that's harder to ignore than any tweet. Indiana has something most franchises spend decades chasing: a generational player in her prime and a fan base that already proved it'll pack buildings for her. Whether the front office treats the boycott as a real warning or waits for it to fade, the next home game's resale prices will answer that question before any press release does. The fans tagging Amber Cox while selling their seats aren't done with Caitlin Clark. They're done writing checks to a front office that keeps putting her in positions to lose. And that's a very different thing.